There are now less than 4 months until the midterm elections in this country, and Democrats are facing a series of headwinds, from inflation to gun violence to abortion rights, that are affecting the attitude of Democratic voters. Meantime, as we've reported, a new New York Times Siena College poll out this week shows 60% of voters, including a quarter of Democrats, disapprove of the job President Biden's doing. Laura Barone-Lopez has more on that Democratic discontent.
Judy, despite the president's low approval ratings, that same poll shows the picture may not be as bleak for Democratic congressional candidates. Voters are evenly divided on which party should control Congress after the midterms. To discuss how Democrats are feeling about this election year, I'm joined by Celinda Lake. She is the president of Lake Research Partners, a Democratic polling group that regularly conducts focus groups with voters. She was also an advisor for President Biden's 2020 campaign. Celinda, thanks for joining us. Let's look beyond the numbers, because you're talking to Democrats and new voters in these focus groups. It's been 3 weeks since Roe was overturned. There's a new gun law. Why are President Biden's approval ratings stuck while Democrats are starting to see favorable movement?
Well, I think it's always slower. The presidential numbers are always slower to move, and the presidential numbers are very tied to the economy, and inflation is still a big problem. People don't expect their congressperson to solve the economy. They unrealistically do expect their president to solve the economy, including their own personal gas prices and the price for skirt steak and their grocery store. So I think that when you get to the congressional races, people are voting a lot more their local issues and what's happening in their states. They're voting things that are clear distinctions between the candidates. And there is no clearer distinction between the candidates right now than opinions on the overturning of Roe v. Wade and access to abortion and birth control for women.
You mentioned Roe, and I wanted to ask you, what are voters saying about what appears to some within his party a cautious approach by President Biden in terms of executive actions to expand abortion access as well as shield patients?
Well, voters don't see it as cautious. Voters actually see the president as being very vocal, and the vice president has been very vocal as well. And when nothing's penetrating right now. There's so much noise out there. It's really hard to break through. But when you relay what the president and the vice president have been doing, what they've said they're going to try to do, that they want to do away with the filibuster to codify Roe, that they are applying every lever at their disposal, people are pretty impressed with that agenda. People are worried about what they can do and what can still be done with this really dramatic and out of the mainstream decision. And they want to ensure that people have access to abortion care, access to birth control, access to safe and legal and non-intrusive miscarriage care. And they're also worried about the slippery slope. They're worried about what happens now to marriage equality, what happens to interracial marriage. Where are we going next?
On another issue of inflation, which is a big issue for Democrats heading into the midterms, consumer prices are up 9.1% since last year, and that's driven by food prices up 12%. The cost of housing is up nearly 6%. Is this dragging down Democrats, and what do voters want them to do about it?
Well, voters want to hear from Democrats on it to begin with. Voters are very concerned when Democrats were saying this was going to be temporary inflation or transitional inflation. And voters would say things like, what planet are these economists living on? I'm not getting a transitory wage increase to deal with my transitory inflation. So the first thing is to recognize the problem, and you don't have a Democrat out there who's not articulate on this problem. And then using, again, all the tools at their disposal to deal with inflation, whether it's supply issues and baby formula, whether it's opening up petroleum reserves, whether it's going after price gouging on prescription drugs. They want action. But in the end, I think that we can only battle to even on the economy. And then I think the winning issues in this fall are going to be things like gun violence and voting rights and Roe v. Wade.
I want to cover two more quick topics with you, Celinda. The January 6 hearings have provided new evidence about former President Trump's efforts to pressure Justice Department officials to even pressure his own vice president to overturn the 2020 election results. Are these revelations coming up in your focus groups with Democratic or independent voters?
They really are. They're coming up with Democrats a lot. First of all, 65% of voters are aware of the hearings and at least aware of some of the findings from the hearings. And among independent voters, it's actually slightly higher. It's 71%. That is unheard of. You never have independents paying more attention than Democrats and Republicans to what's going on. Voters think it's a crime. 82% of voters want accountability. Independents and Democrats really want accountability, and they're furious about the will of the people being overturned. And January 6th is just the beginning. That attack on our country was the beginning of overturning elections, overturning the will of the people, overturning people's votes. And now we have Roe overturning people's will there, with voters solidly opposing the decision. So this is a very big issue, and it's penetrated way more than anyone would have imagined.
Despite all of those issues that you just mentioned that could very well potentially motivate Democratic voters, recent polling shows that a majority of Democrats don't want President Biden to be the nominee in 2024. But are they naming any alternatives?
Oh, I think that those numbers are very flawed, honestly. It's a really silly question. In some ways, first of all, people are not naming alternatives. Secondly, Democrats give the president solidly positive job performance ratings, 3/4 or better. Thirdly, voters almost say it as, in the sense of it's a really hard job and maybe I'll offer him a retirement because it'll be easier on him, not that it'll be better for us. So those questions are extremely flawed. And I think what you'll see is Democrats uniting behind Democrats, Democrats uniting behind the president and supporting his agenda overwhelmingly.
Celinda Lake, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Laura. And we will be speaking with a Republican strategist about these and similar topics in coming days.